Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Tuesday, the 4th of July 2023, and I'm reading out of Life as Carola. It is Joan Grant's far memory book about Carola, who was born on the 4th of May 1510. She was the illegitimate daughter of Lord Griffin. She was banished from the castle. She has been with her mother on the streets and wandering from town to town. Her mother was a lute player. Her mother is dead, and she is now, I think, 17 or 18, and she's traveling with the troubadours, and her friend Lucia has had the pox and is disfigured. We are now at chapter 12, The Alchemist's Daughter. Bernard had gone off to a town about 20 leagues distant, because he had heard that it is an annual fair for the champions of the wrestling bouts, and they would receive 5 gold pieces. Lucia was still determined to pour her potion into his wine as soon as he returned, and when I tried to argue with her, she refused to listen. So at last I decided to seek out the alchemist's daughter, to try either to frighten her into refusing to see Lucia anymore, or, if she had some measure of knowledge by which she could recognize mine, to convince her that she must abandon the practice of the black arts. I expected Sophia to be an old hag, small and wizened, under her trappings of witchcraft, with piercing eyes and dirty, claw-like hands. But she was younger than Lucia, not very tall, though plump and strongly built, her dark hair neatly smoothed and her breasts round and matronly under the green woolen bodice. She welcomed me into her house as warmly as if I had been a farmer's wife, come to discuss cheese-making with a friendly neighbour, which surprised me very much until I found that Lucia had told her all about me. She must have thought me a wise woman, for to me she made no mysteries, and soon I was sure that she brewed her potion with as little guile as an honest kitchen girl. Although her father had been an alchemist, I think, from what she told me, that he must have been more of a scholar than a sorcerer. He had known of the virtues of herbs, and from them made healing draughts, not only for human beings but for animals. Sophia had helped him in his work, gathering plants and grinding up the spices brought by merchants from the east. He had taught her Latin, so she could read the manuscripts on calfskin, which she had found in an iron box after his death. She showed one of them to me, running her fingers along the lines of faded brown writing as she read out, "To cure the bloody flux, both of the lungs and the bowels." Then there was a list of herbals, of which I only recognized cowslip root and oak bark. "These to be pounded with fish livers and hog's blood, and of this a great spoonful at the sun's rising and setting." "Did your father often make curses?" I asked her. "He gave health to more people than ever did a duke's physician. He cured so many that they thought him a sorcerer, even though he denied it. Sometimes I told him he was more of a cook than an alchemist, for most of his remedies were nearer broths than potions. There is a weed which grows in the stream near here, that he stewed in a little water and then squeezed and gave the juice to children when their gums bled or their lips were cracked. He always said it was the best cure for the scurvy. Then he gave some sorrel broth for boils and infused wild peppermint for sleeplessness. If anyone came to him with a belly swell, he told them to fast for 3 days, except for a cupful of hot olive oil and hog's blood, 2 parts to 1, 3 times a day. He never believed in sorcerer's tricks, and told people to follow some ritual or recite an incantation only when he knew they were too credulous to obey him without it. He always said that if he knew someone would be greatly benefited by an infusion of herbs, but would drink it only if he told them the herbs had been gathered in the garden of the Indies, the gate of which was guarded by a 7-headed serpent, whose name they had to invoke in a prayer, it made no difference if they thought it was the prayer, not the peppermint, that cured their windy colic. I have seen children who were puny weaklings grow strong and beautiful after they were brought to him. He believed that long ago men worshipped the sun instead of God. He would have been declared a heretic if the priests had known that he was a kind of sun worshipper himself. He used to tell mothers that his potions were made active by the sun, and explained how the potions could feel the sun's rays through the flesh just as a seed feels it through the ground, and they must let the sun shine on the child's body. And the virtue contained in the potion came up through the skin and drove out all the evil humours. They would never have obeyed him unless they believed him to be a magician. For lots of mothers would rather let their child whimper its way into the grave than let it lie naked on the grass. If you do not believe in charms and sorcery, why did you give a love potion to Lucia? If she had not come to me, she would have gone to some other wise woman, and at least there are no poisonous drugs in mine. It is as I thought. Wise women are only tricksters, or at best herbalists. Sophia was indignant. Because I do not dabble in the black arts, you need not think I'm ignorant of alchemy. Other wise women have told me their secrets. Powerful enough they are, too, without a demon's aid. She told me some of them. Take of hot mule dung 3 parts, and of a snake's fat 2 parts. Pound them to a paste with a blending of powdered amber and fennel seed. Enough of this to cover the left thumbnail will keep a man faithful to the woman who dissolves it in his wine, even if he has to leave her for 40 days. Another was, take the udder of a goat, the genitals of an ape, the womb of a bitch, and seize them well in vinegar. In the liquid that will flow from them by the 9th day, soak linen cloths and bind these on the breasts for 3 days before the full moon. This will make the withered paps of an old nun or a grandmother as taut and rounded as the breasts of a young virgin. She expected me to be impressed by the extent of her knowledge. I said rather scornfully, surely nuns and grandmothers have other things than their breasts to think about. You would be surprised how many clients I've had for that brew. And when they find it does them no good, Sophia laughed, they think it's their own fault, for I always tell them that before I used to do it on myself, mine were like a pair of empty wineskins, so they think they've had proof of its powers. Isn't it difficult, Sophia, to make people believe you hold magical secrets? It is easy to convince the fools, and their whispers soon spread through the town. I think if someone is sufficiently credulous, I'll tell them to meet me at midnight in the deserted hut by the river. Few people will go there at night, for it is supposed to be haunted by the leper who died in it. They have to wait outside until they hear the night owl hoot 3 times, and when they enter they are permitted to see me in the shape I assume to be through the night on my broomstick. Sorry. And when they enter they are permitted to see me in the shape I assume to fly through the sky on my broomstick. She opened a cupboard. Here are my properties, the pointed hat, the cloak painted with red and black symbols of the stars, the stuffed lizard. They make me into a terrifying witch. She laughed. Then there is Filippo. Filippo is my familiar. Some even say it is the shape I prefer to live in, and that I only change into a woman when I hear a human being approaching. Who is Filippo? Go outside and wait until you count 100. Then scratch on the door and you shall see Filippo. I did as she told me. When I opened the door at first I thought the room was empty. Then I saw, sitting on a low stool beside the hearth, an enormous toad. It seemed to stare at me. Its mouth opened and shut as if it were talking a language I could not hear. An owl hooted. An owl hooting in the daytime is an evil omen. The toad flopped from the stool and hopped purposefully towards the half-open cupboard. As it crossed the sill, the door closed behind it. After a moment the latch lifted again and Sophia stepped out. I must have looked very surprised, for she started to laugh. Come, Carola, I will show you. It must be true that I can change myself into a toad. See, the cupboard is empty. The toad vanished. There was nothing in the cupboard, not even a cobweb. I tapped the walls, but they appeared to be quite solid. She was delighted at my not being able to see how the trick was done, and when I admitted I could not solve the mystery, she showed me how part of the back of the cupboard slid to one side. We climbed through into another room, and I saw the toad sitting in a basket by the fire. Sophia went over and stroked it. It was my father who trained Filippo. He's always fed in the cupboard, and to call him I hoot like an owl. He loves milk and raw meat, and before he is fed he is put on the stool in the front room. It takes him a few moments to make up his mind to hop down, so I have time to get out of the room. You only saw it by daylight, but even you would have found it impressive if you had just walked along through the wood to keep a midnight appointment with a witch. When they see Filippo hopping across the room, they think they have come too early and take me unawares. Now, this was an interesting chapter, or not, my friends?